You know, when you were talking about that setup with Winnie Davis and the Battleground, Texas, and the Democrat, reminds me of a photo that Ann Holland sent me this morning. And it's back from the Obama campaign, and it's a picture of a strip center. And it's the most appropriate thing I could ever imagine. It has the Obama sign, and then it has a lawyer's office that says bankruptcy, and then it has another office next door that says divorce, and next to that's the liquor store. So that kind of reminded me of that image right there. As Matt says, my name is Mike Snyder. I am a recovering journalist after 30 years at NBC5. Our mission at Vote to Reduce Debt, which is a PAC that was started by Fort Worth businessman Ken Davis, who many of you know from Great Western Drilling and is a longtime resident of Fort Worth. We are dedicated to campaigning and electing a real conservative majority in the U.S. Senate. We have been at this now since January, and we are only supporting candidates who take a pledge to reduce the federal debt. Now let me talk to you about some numbers for just a minute. Start with 17, and I'll do it this way. I want you to look at that chart very carefully. 17.8 trillion is the amount of our current federal debt. The next number I want you to think about is 1.3 billion. That is the amount that our federal debt goes up, that every day we draw a breath here on this planet. The next number I want you to think about is this one. 19.3 trillion. That is the amount that the Office of Management and Budget in the White House projects that the deficit and the federal debt will reach when Barack Hussein Obama leaves office in January of 2017. The last number I want you to remember is 77. Actually 77%. That's the percentage of people in the United States who believe that we are headed in the wrong direction. In other words, almost 8 out of every 10 people believe we're headed in the wrong way. Proverb 22:7 says, the borrower is a slave to the lender. And that is the foundation for our super PAC. And friends, make no mistake about it, we are enslaving our children and our grandchildren to the federal debt that we borrow money for every day. We are spending money we don't have. Did you know that we borrow 40 cents of every federal dollar we spend? But you want to really get scared? 35 cents out of every federal debt dollar is owned by 15 foreign countries. The largest chunk of that is 9% that is owned by China. If China decided that they were not going to buy any more federal bonds from us, or any more treasury bonds from us, or decided even to sell 1 or 2 positions of those, they could tank the federal treasury. And if anybody doesn't realize this, they could actually stop what we consider to be our economic expansion dead in its tracks. And friends, we don't have much of an economic expansion, let me tell you. Let me tell you a little bit about what happened in World War II. World War II, we had millions of Americans who stood in the gap, facing down a dictator in Germany and an imperial president, or an imperial guard, if you would, out of Japan. They stood in the gap to protect our way of life. And the question to you tonight is, who's going to stand in the gap now against this particular threat to this country? Bob Vanderplatz, who's a good friend of mine, who runs a church organization called the Family Leader in Iowa, declared that the national debt is as strong a moral issue, is as much a threat to our financial viability of this country as Hitler was to the United States in World War II. Who is going to stand in that gap? If not you and I, if not now, when? I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of electing people to office in this country, specifically in the Senate, who will tell us anything in the world to get elected. Then when they get to Washington, they do jolly well what they please and spend us into financial oblivion. Well, there's people like this young man sitting right here who will do exactly what he promises when he reaches the state legislature. And we must support people who will do what they promise us now when they reach the U.S. Senate. I will give you a flyer when we leave here. We are supporting 8 candidates right now for U.S. Senate. And let me tell you our strategy. Back in November and December, we did deep analysis of the voting records from 2008 and 12. George Barna, who researches for United in Purpose, discovered 26 million Americans were self-identifying conservatives who stayed home in the last election. 3 reasons they said they stayed home. 1, they didn't like Romney. 2, they didn't think anybody would wave the conservative flag in the Senate or the House for that matter, or the White House. And 3rd, and this is the most heinous part, they didn't think their vote counted. We did deeper research on that, on those figures, and I asked George Barna to help us locate the states where we could take a chunk, a bite-sized chunk, of those uninspired conservatives from the last election, move that needle 1 point, and take seats away from liberal Democrats in the U.S. Senate. We came up with 11 states. 3 of those states, the races are literally already decided. So we pulled out of those states and concentrated on 8 specific states, who I'll go through for you very quickly. We are in Alaska, in Arkansas, Louisiana, Colorado, we're in Iowa, Michigan, and North Carolina. The states that we left behind because those races are pretty much already decided. Montana, Steve Daines is already in the lead over there by 20.4 points. So that race is pretty much decided. Next door in South Dakota, the Governor Mike Rounds is in a 3-way race over there. But South Dakota, man, happens to be a plurality state instead of a majority state, so whoever gets the most votes over there goes, and he has an 11-point lead, and I don't think that he's going to squander that. Let's go to South Carolina, where we pulled out of that race. We were supporting Tim Scott. Tim Scott is going to be the first statewide elected black man elected in South Carolina's history. We backed him in the primary. He leads his Democrat opponent by a mere 60 points. So, needless to say, we didn't want to pile on. So we decided to leave those races behind. But let me tell you how doable this project is. Take Alaska. We're supporting Dan Sullivan up there. He's the current Attorney General up there. Alaska has 43,000 voters who are self-identifying conservatives who skipped the last election. We need 6,000 of that group to vote for Sullivan to push him over 50% of the vote in Alaska. Only 6,000. You want to know the good part? We know every one of who those 43,000 are. Not only just their names, their addresses, their emails, and their cell phone numbers. And our campaign has laser targeted those people with a program called Nation Builder. And we specifically send not only Facebook ads, but we also send emails and we make telephone calls to those people. How effective is this campaign to go that way? How do most campaigns go? They go home to mama, don't they? Paid television, which costs millions. Paid radio, paid direct mail. They also go and do the normal thing that they normally do, which is to simply say, we're not going to do anything on the internet. It's too young. We don't know anything about it. Let me tell you, 80% of the United States population has one of these. Not just a cell phone, a smartphone capable of achieving the internet. And that's exactly where we go. What did we do in Iowa? Iowa, in May, we got involved with Joni Ernst's campaign. Joni Ernst was in a 5-way contest for the nomination to the U.S. Senate from Iowa. May 1st, she was in a dead heat with a gentleman by the name of Mark Jacobs. For those of you who may think that that name's familiar, he was the CEO of Reliant Energy in Houston. He moved to Iowa for the sole purpose of running for U.S. Senate. He spent $3 million of his own money in the last 2 weeks on television ads hoping to beat Joni Ernst. When we entered the race May 1st, they were tied, dead heat. When we reached June 3rd, the primary date, the Des Moines Register said, Joni will get 34% of the vote, not enough to avoid a runoff. She will go to the state convention where there's going to be a runoff, where Mark Jacobs has already lassoed the 100 people necessary to win that nomination. That night, and I will remember this time till I die, 9:56 that night, Channel 13 WHO in Des Moines, Iowa, where Ronald Reagan got his start, announced that Joni Ernst had not only won the nomination, but had had a surprise landslide at 56.2% of the vote to Mark Jacobs' 16%, and he came in third. 2 days later, the Des Moines Register called Vote to Reduce Debt. Sorry, I don't have the Vanna to come tonight. Declared Vote to Reduce Debt the stealth campaign. Why? Because we went directly to the people, around the siloed news agencies of ABC, NBC, CNN, Chicken Noodle News, and everybody else. The bottom line is we went where people live. They live on the internet, they live on Facebook, they live on their cell phones. We don't call regular hardlines, we call only cell phones. And this campaign right now is in the final sprint. We have 19 days to Election Day, Matt. But you know what else we do? You know what starts Monday? Early voting. Early voting in Iowa has been going on since the 26th of September. You want to hear something really heinous? Voter fraud is a likelihood in Colorado in a big way. On the 16th of October, paper ballots will be sent to every person who is 18 years old and older in Colorado. There are no regular polling places on Election Day, only election centers. So if you do not vote, say on Election Day, if you've not sent in your paper ballot by November 3rd, you can go to every county has a polling center. One polling center. It's a weird election. Can you imagine an election without polling places? But then they go and they can say, hey, listen, I didn't get my paper ballot, I want to vote. No computerized system to check. They have to take their word by law in Colorado, and they can vote that ballot. But Matt here lives in an apartment complex. He happened to watch 3 people move out of that apartment complex, but yet they still, because it was their last known addresses, those 3 people still got their ballot in the mail. Well, crafty old Matt went over and he pulled those paper ballots out, voted them, put them back in the mail, and away they go. And then he also votes his. Colorado is going to be rife with this. And how do you beat it? How do you beat that? You beat it by turning out more people than they do. You don't try to suppress their vote. Because the way they're trying to suppress our vote, have you all been watching the national media? Oh, the Republican wave is waning. They're not going to get as many people in the Senate as they thought. Who's saying that? NBC, ABC, CBS, the New York Times, all bastions of republicanism. That is voter suppression by any other means. The real truth is what I'm telling you. Our polls show that every one of our candidates, except Tom Tillis in North Carolina, is right now in the lead. Tom Tillis is facing a tough race against Kay Hagan over in North Carolina. Because Kay Hagan tried to accuse him of something that, this gives you the idea of how the lies go unreported. She accused Tom Tillis in North Carolina of cutting $1.5 billion from education in that state. You want to know the truth? The last legislature cut $1.5 billion from its bottom line, but increased education spending by $700 million. How do you make an increase, a cut? You do it by lying. And that's exactly what's going on over there. It's beginning to backfire on her. She had an 8-point lead on him. It's now down to 1.5 as of today. And it's because of efforts like this. I know this is your fundraiser, but Vote to Reduce Debt needs your help. We're in the final sprint. Last 19 days to the finish line. And every dollar that you give us goes to our Get On the Vote campaigns, both on the phones and with our ground troops. We also have hundreds of volunteers in the streets in each one of our 8 states that I'll give you a flyer for. And you can go to votetoreducedebt.com, and it's vote, the number 2, reducedebt.com, and you can make your donation by credit card. No donation is too small. None is too large. Because we're a super PAC, we can take as much money as you can. Just be aware that we are not tax deductible, and we have to report our donations and our expenditures, because we are free speech. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to end with one thing, and I know I've gone a little long, but I want to leave this with you. A long time ago, and I want to make sure I get this quote correct, Billy Graham said, "Courage is contagious. When one brave man takes a stand, the spines of other men and women are stiffened." Doing the right thing is not always popular. It is often painful. But we have to lead by example. And this is our time to lead by example. It may be the best and last chance for us to retake the Senate and turn this country around and preserve the financial viability for us, our children, and our grandchildren. And I hope you will join us in this fight. Election day is 19 days away. Matt, thank you so much for giving us so much time. I appreciate it.